Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Upfront podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Back-to-back days going live here on Twitter and YouTube alongside Kevin Cannon. Last night gave our Week 1 preview, so going a little bit out of order, but also wanted to do a season-long prediction episode. We're going to break down all our division winners, our Super Bowl winner, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, the Rookies of the Year, as well as the MVP, and kind of just go little bit in depth of how we think this season is going to go. But as we said, also dropped our Week 1 picks and plays last night for the 5 biggest games of the week, as always, that we'll do each and every week this season. But Kev, welcome back, and we're now one day closer to kickoff.
Yeah, one day closer. So very excited. Can't wait.
All right, so we're going to go through – we'll start with the NFC. We'll just go division by division and kind of just bounce back and forth off each other. And then give our NFC champion and then go to the AFC and do the same thing before we wrap up with our awards and then finish up with our Super Bowl champs. But all right, Kev, you started off for us. NFC East, who do you have winning the division and why?
I have the Eagles. I think they are just the better team. They got better in the offseason. I know the questions are still going to linger with Sirianni and the coordinators, but I think they're the best team in the division. The Cowboys didn't really get better. They had a lot of drama in the offseason with the contracts and stuff. And then you have the Giants and Commanders. I think the Giants are really going to fall off with Daniel Jones. They just should have never signed that contract. And the Commanders will be interesting to see how Daniels does at quarterback, but they're not going to be competing for the division title.
Yeah, I think top to bottom, the Eagles have the number 1 roster. I still think the Cowboys are the biggest threat to them in the division race, but I also think the Eagles roster is a lot better. I think the Cowboys running game is going to be one of, if not the worst, potentially in the league. I mean, you're banking on Zeke for his second stint there in Dallas, and then Rico Dowdle is a guy who has shown some burst and some ability in some parts, but not enough to count on. When you look at the Eagles, they've really improved the run game, bringing in Saquon, and you talked about with the coaching. I think really it is kind of a boomer bust type situation. Like we could see this team be the best team in the entire NFC, or I think it bottoms out. I don't think it's kind of a middle of the pack. It's more like what we saw 2 years ago throughout the entire season, or what we saw over the second half of last year. Like it might just be time to blow it up at the end of the day with the coaching staff. But I do think the coordinators coming in with Kellen and Fangio really helps improve that team. I think the Giants are going to be one of the bottom 2 to 3 teams in the league. And I think the Commanders are going to be solid, like 8-9, 7-10, give them a lot of faith kind of going forward with Jaden Daniels. But I still think that team needs a lot of improvement on both sides of the ball. But I think the Eagles are far and away the best roster in this division, and I have them winning the division, going 13-4, getting the 1 seed as well in the NFC, minus 125 on DraftKings to win the East. All right, over to the North now. I'll go first on this one. I got the Packers, actually, the Eagles' first opponent on Friday night. I have them getting the 4 seed. They're plus 230. 2 in the NFC North. I have them going 10-7. I have them edging out the Lions that we'll talk about in a little bit as well. But I think this Packers team is up and coming. I think the NFC North at the top, I wouldn't argue with anyone if you said Packers, Lions, or Bears. I think all 3 of those teams are equally kind of competitive for that top spot there. I think Jordan Love certainly showed some good ball last year, but I think he definitely has more to prove too. We're kind of banking on a second half of a good season. But it's a really young roster. Matt LaFleur has proven to be a really good coach as well. So I like what I've seen out of the Packers over the second half of last year into the playoffs. And I think the Lions might take a bit of a step back. I feel like they're a little bit too trendy of a pick right now. So I'm going to go with the Packers to win the North.
Yeah, so I'm going with the trendy pick, Lions. I have them as my number 1 seed in the NFC, going 13-4. Plus 130 to win the division. I think they're just a really good team. There's not a ton of weaknesses. If you were to point 2 weaknesses, it would be on the defensive side of the ball, but I think they did a pretty good job of addressing that in the draft and free agency. The Packers, I think, are still going to be a very good team. I have them in the playoffs. I just not completely sold on Jordan Love. I think he's going to have a good year, but I don't know if he's going to have a good enough year to lead the Packers to the division title. I'm also pretty high on the Bears. I have them just missing the playoffs, but I think Caleb Williams is going to have a really good year out there. And then the Vikings at the bottom of the division, I just don't see a whole lot happening with them this year. It's kind of punting towards next year with J.J. McCarthy. But I have the Lions winning the division and also being the overall 1 seed in the NFC.
All right, we go to the South now. I feel like I've seen this team a lot, and it's expected. I would assume they have the best roster. I feel like the Bucks aren't getting talked about enough, and they won the division last year. They won a playoff game as well, so I feel like they're being discounted a little. I think I saw their win total is only at 7.5, so I'd be willing to take a look at them potentially to win the division. I think that's at like plus 400, but I do have the favorite on the sports books with the Falcons at minus 130 winning the division. I have them getting the 3 seed with a 10-7 record. Make the 2 splashiest quarterback moves, I think, potentially of the offseason, signing Kirk Cousins and then going and getting Penix. I feel like it was written in stone for most of the pre-draft process that Caleb would be a Bear, Jaden Daniels to the Commanders. And then from there, it was kind of unknown, but no one saw Penix or any quarterback for that situation going to Atlanta after they brought in Cousins. But if Cousins does go down or if Cousins does struggle coming off this injury, I think Penix is good enough to step in and help lead this team to a division title too. But new head coach there and Raheem Morris, it'll be interesting to see how he does in his second stint as an NFL head coach. But that team reminds me a lot of the Packers, where they have a lot of youth on that team, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and it might be kind of time for them to break through. So I really like that roster. I'm low on the Saints. I think they're about as average as you can get, 8-9, 9-8. I think the Panthers are going to be – I took their win total under the other day at 5.5, I think it was. I don't see that being a 5-win team at all. I think they're really still going to struggle there. And like I said, I think the Bucs potentially are your biggest fighter for that division spot with the Falcons. You look at Mike Evans, over 1,000 yards every year. Chris Godwin's a really solid receiver, and it seems like Baker has settled down, and Baker's now taken 2 different teams to the playoffs, 1 playoff game. So he might not be the best player, but he finds a way to get it done at the end of the day. So I think the Bucs are going to give the Falcons a real push, but at the end of the day, I'm going to ride with the Falcons in the South.
Yeah, I kind of see this division unfolding the same way you do. I have the Falcons going 10-7 as well, but I have them coming in at the 4 seed. The Falcons, their offense, just the skilled positions might be as good as any in the league. You have Drake London, Kyle Pitts, hopefully with a steady quarterback play will just break out this year. And then Bijan Robinson can kind of be that Christian McCaffrey for the Falcons, do it all out of the backfield stuff. The Bucs, like you said, I think are a very good team. They'll definitely challenge the Falcons. And then also, like you were saying, that I just don't see the Saints or the Panthers doing anything in this division. If you're the Panthers, you kind of just hope that Bryce Young shows that potentially he can be the quarterback of the future. If you're the Saints, I don't know if you even want Derek Carr to be the quarterback of your future, so I'm not exactly – they're in the no man's land where they're good enough to win a few games but really not do anything in the playoffs, which kind of sucks for them. But Falcons winning the division.
All right, how about the West? I've seen like more and more as predictions have come out this week that people are taking the Rams actually, and we talked about it a lot last night how crazy the 49ers offseason has been. I mean, even their first-round pick – literally got shot in the chest this past weekend and he somehow survived, and it sounds like he's going to play football this year. I mean, from contracts to a near death and everything in between, it seems like the 49ers have had a real chaotic offseason after going to the Super Bowl. Do you think that they still win the West?
I do. I have them going 12-5, the 3 seed. I do have the Rams right behind them, finishing 11-6. And we did talk about it yesterday. I think the Rams are a really good team. Stafford and McVay together, that's always a formidable combo. And then you have the 2 great receivers there. But the Niners, you just go down the roster, offense and defense. They're as good as it gets. Brock Purdy's not going to lose you games. He might not win you a ton, but he doesn't need to with the weapons that they have. So I think the Niners do end up winning the division in a close one. I'm not super high on the Seahawks or Cardinals either. I think the Cardinals could potentially be the better team out of them too, with the Seahawks kind of regressing and Geno, it being his last year in Seattle. And then that 1 year where he got the big contract is more of an outlier for his career. But overall, Niners win the division again this year.
Yeah, I think Brock Purdy, when you look at him, I kind of said last night that I think Aaron Rodgers might have the most pressure on him out of any player in the league this year, but I think you could put Brock Purdy in that conversation as well because he has the potential to lock himself in for a big payday, but also the roster that he has around him. If they don't win it this year and then they have to pay him next year, it's going to be hard to really keep any other kind of assisting role players outside of your main guys. So, a ton of pressure on him. But at the same time, I don't think he's given us a reason to doubt him yet. I mean, people feel like every week they're like, "Oh, this is a week that he's going to come back to earth," and we saw it kind of in that Ravens game. I remember on Christmas, and then in the Super Bowl, he got outperformed by Mahomes. But who doesn't? So he just finds a way to win. It seems like week in, week out. I don't think the division as a whole is that strong. I have them winning the West as well, going 12-5. That's good enough to get the 2 seed for me. But I do think that they might take some bumps and bruises out of the gate. We talked about it last night where so many key pieces missed time this offseason. It might take them a little bit of time to kind of get back off the ground. But I also could see them having a similar season to the Eagles last year where it's like the Super Bowl hangover might just be a little bit too much, a little bit too chaotic of an offseason, and things kind of fall apart as well. So, 49ers, I think, are kind of in the boom or bust category as well. When you look at roster wise, you said probably the best overall roster in the league, but they haven't got it done in the big spot yet. So a lot of pressures on them and the coaching staff, but I do think they're good enough to win that division there. I have my first wild card team though does come out of the West. The same record. I was surprised when I went through my predictions that I actually had the Rams finishing at 12-5 as well. But um, I have the Rams to make the playoffs, not to win the division, obviously, but to make the playoffs, they're -110, so they're right there. I have them 12-5. I assume it just came down to some tiebreakers there, but I think the defense is going to struggle. I think the defense is going to be one of the weaker units in the league, especially now that Aaron Donald's gone. But I think that offense is going to be able to score with anyone. If Matthew Stafford stays healthy, Nakua and Cup a full second year together, Kyron Williams has emerged. That's going to be a really, really dangerous offense. So I think they proved last year that they were kind of able to figure things out as the year went on. And the Rams are one of the best drafting teams as well. We know that they like to trade their kind of high round picks, their first and their seconds, but then go and do really well in the later parts of the draft and just get guy after guy. So I think the Rams are going to be a playoff team as well. 12-5 might be a little over ambitious. I think they're more of like a 10-7 to 11-6, but I got the Rams as my first wild card team.
Yeah, my first wild card team is the Dallas Cowboys, the 5 seed, going 11-6. They're -210 just to make the playoffs. I think this is the most predictable thing in the world. The Cowboys, they've gone 12-5 the past 3 years. I do think they'll slightly regress this year, finishing 11-6. They still have Dak. They have CeeDee Lamb. Their O-line's still pretty good. Dak in a contract year, I think he's going to have a great year statistically, and I think it's going to lead to a decent amount of wins. Nothing crazy, but 11-6, they might win their first playoff game, but nothing out of the ordinary here for the Cowboys.
My second wild card team, I have, I believe you said your number 1 seed with the Lions. Yeah, your number 1 seed. I have my second wild card team as the Detroit Lions at 10-7, making it as well as I said with the Packers, 10-7 for them. So it's kind of just going to come down to tiebreakers at the end of the day and whatever the system I use that calculated it. But the Lions to make the playoffs -245. I don't really think that's worth a bet there, but 10-7, I think they're going to be a really strong offense again. The defense still worries me a little bit. I think they get stronger on that side of the ball, but we're still kind of depending on Jared Goff at the end of the day. Can he be the guy to get the team over the top? We saw he's played really well, but I still don't think anyone's putting him in kind of that elite category. And to be the quarterback to take down Patrick Mahomes, or then you look at the AFC, most people would agree they probably have the top quarterbacks over the NFC. Whoever you'd be dueling against in the Super Bowl potentially, the AFC might actually have the leg up there. So Jared Goff still might be a little bit of a limiting their ceiling a little, but I do think it's still a good enough team to make the playoff. Wouldn't surprise me if they win the division, but in my tiebreaker scenarios had them going in the 6th spot in the wild card.
Yeah, so we're starting to repeat teams here a little bit, just different orders. My 6 seed is the Rams, going 11-6. like you said, Stafford, great quarterback. You still have McVay. The defense, it has some question marks. They have the two draft picks from Florida State coming in to hopefully try and replace Aaron Donald. I know that's impossible to do, but hopefully they live up to their draft status, and just the offense is going to be able to put up points and win them some games. So I have the Rams 6 seed.
My 7 seed, I have the Bears at 10-7 as well. So I have 3 teams from the NFC North all going 10-7. I'm sure that would be a fun week 18 on the red zone or whatever, watching and tracking all those results. Bears are a team too, where I talked about the Rams being 12-5, maybe more of a 10-7, 11-6. I think the Bears are more of a 9-8. I'm really excited to watch Caleb. I think that's going to be a super fun offense, but you also have to remember that it is a rookie quarterback, and he did not play as well as we were used to seeing the first couple of years in college last year. He struggled, tried to play a little bit too much hero ball. He's got the weapons around him now, but it's also still the Bears, an unproven team that hasn't proven to be able to kind of get back into the mix and be a legit playoff squad. So still a lot to prove and some stuff to overcome, but I really like the defense there. And I'm not the biggest Matt Eberflus fan. I think roster-wise, I would probably put them actually above the Packers at least, maybe, and not that far behind the Lions, but I'm not that big of an Eberflus fan. I think he might hold him back as well. And if it's a team that fails to make the playoffs, they go like more of a 7-10. I think he could, certainly be on the way out. So I'm gonna have the Bears making the wild card at 10-7, but I do think it's probably more like a 9-8 by year's end.
Yeah, so my final wild card team, 7 seed, is going to be the Packers, going 10-7, minus 155 just to make the playoffs. They're a pretty good team. They showed it last year, winning their first playoff game and then taking the Niners to the brink. They very much could have won and should have won that game. I think they're in for a pretty good year here. It's a tough division they play in, but I think they'll end up winning 10 games, making the playoffs as the 7 seed.
All right, so I have no Cowboys making it then, obviously. Any, I guess, in your opinion on your NFC teams, like any egregious misses that you're surprised didn't make it?
No, I mean, I was definitely shocked when I looked at yours and didn't see the Cowboys, but I think we kind of have very similar teams, just different seedings by a game or two. So I think we pretty much agree on most stuff.
All right, well, now we'll go to the NFC Championship before we go down to the AFC. But Kev, NFC Championship, who's hosting it, and then who will be taking it all the way to the Super Bowl?
I have the Lions hosting it, playing the Eagles, and the Lions end up beating the Eagles, and they go to the Super Bowl.
Imagine coming on here 5 years ago and saying that. That would have been something, but look where they've came, and I'm not going to be shocked if that's the case, but that's not my pick. I have the Eagles hosting it, and once again with the 49ers coming to Philly for an NFC Championship game, the Eagles winning it. As I said it kind of with the Eagles at the beginning, I really do think it's a boomer bust year where they are going to be, with all the talent, certainly great on offense I'm expecting, and the defense I'm expecting to be a lot better. But I think it's a 13-4 or like an 8-9, 7-10. I really think there's no kind of in between of a 10-7, 11-6. Like, this team is going to be one of the best of the best, or it's going to fall out because of everything kind of internally. There's too much talent for this team to not be really good, barring a major injury to the quarterback or some of those key pieces on the offensive side. So give me Philadelphia over San Fran. I think San Fran by that point in the year will have stuff kind of figured out from this tumultuous offseason, but give me the Eagles at the Link and kind of end the fairy tale that is Brock Purdy there. All right, we go on to the AFC now, following the same format, Kev. AFC East, don't tell me you're buying into this squad.
I am taking the Jets, ending up with the 4 seed, 11-6, plus 165 to win the division. If you just think about it, last year they were still in playoff hunt towards the end of the year, and they had just absolutely terrible quarterback play. You figure Aaron Rodgers has to give you something better than that. I know he's getting up there in age. I know he's coming off the injury, and he also didn't look great in his last year in Green Bay. But he had the year last year to kind of learn the offense. It's an offense he did use in Green Bay with Hackett. So I expected him to come out and then play pretty good on offense. And then the defense is just really, really good. So I think the Bills take a step back. The Pats are going to be terrible. And I'm just still not sold on the Dolphins as a team. So I have the Jets winning the division here.
Yeah, you're never going to get me to say the Jets are going to win the division. I just can't buy myself into that. I'll buy more into the Lions because I do think with the Lions, at least I've seen it now. Like I've seen it happen. I've seen them going around. I've seen them be a game away from the Super Bowl. The Jets have the longest playoff drought in the four major professional sports, North American professional sports. Aaron Rodgers missed a complete year last year, 40 years old now, coming off an Achilles. It just seems like it's drama after drama after drama. I think I took their under 10.5 wins. I'm seeing people pick these guys for the Super Bowl. I can't get my head around it. The talent's there, but it seems like always something goes wrong. And we saw it last year. They're getting all the hype as well. And Rodgers goes out there, tears his Achilles on the 4th snap of the season. So I'm not buying into that. I think this is the weak division. I actually did like a 7-leg division parlay, and this is the division I left out because, if all breaks right, I could see the Jets doing it, but I've never seen it before, so I'm not going to buy into it. The Dolphins, I don't think are strong enough on defense. I think it's a little bit too much flash. You get them into environments that's uncomfortable for them. I think it really hurts them. They're going to look really good at times and score 50 points in some games, but I'm not buying into them as my division winner. Patriots, I think, are going to be the worst team in the league this year. I think they win 1 to 2 games. So that brings us back to the Bills, and I'm not a huge believer in the Bills squad, but after everything shook out, I had them going 11-6 and getting the 4 seed plus 195 to win the division. They've won 4 straight AFC championships, and the problem hasn't been going to the playoffs, making the playoffs. It's been winning in the playoffs. So I'll roll with those guys because I do think these other teams are still a little bit too inconsistent and can't really rely on them right now. AFC North, I will go with the Cincinnati Bengals to get the number 1 seed as well, going 13-4. They're plus 145 to win the division, tied with the Ravens. I really don't think you could go wrong either way, but I do think we see a little bit of parity this year and a little bit of a step back from the Ravens after last year. I felt like last year was their year to really break through, and they fell short to Mahomes. And it feels like that's kind of the story with everyone, but Jamar came back to practice today. It seems like he's going to be practicing and playing going forward. T. Higgins back, a healthy Burrow for the first time. This is like the first healthy offseason he's had after getting hurt late last year, and he's ready to go. I just think when he's fully healthy and balling, they're as good as anybody. They can beat anybody in the league. And I just don't believe in the Browns necessarily with Watson. He was $245 million guaranteed, and he's not played like that. It sounds like his arm is already bothering him. And they needed kind of Joe Flacco to come in there and rescue the show last year. Will it be Jameis this year? It's something to look at as well. But I think those are kind of the 3 teams in the AFC North that you make an argument for. And then the Steelers I see as 9-8. And we know Mike Tomlin doesn't go below 500, but I don't see him as really much better than that. I think that 9-8 kind of helps them flirt with a playoff spot. You might need to get to 10-7, but whether it's Fields or Wilson, I don't really think there's a significant difference between the two of them. I think we'll see by the end of the year it be Fields, and he's able to add that kind of rushing element, and Tomlin's coaching and the defense could help them win some games. But I am going to go with the Bengals there to win the division and then get the number 1 seed as well.
Yeah, we kind of see this division the exact same. I have Bengals getting the 1 seed as well. I have them going 14-3. It is a really good division. All 4 teams could make the playoffs. I know the Steelers, it would kind of be a little more out there if they were to, but they definitely could end up doing it. Like you noted, Mike Tomlin doesn't go under 500. So if you just get 2 more wins over 500, you might be in the playoffs. I think Joe Burrow is just going to have an unreal year this year. He has great weapons on the offensive side of the ball. The defense is always just competitive and frisky. I expect the Ravens to still be really good. I just think they're going to take a little step back, as you noted. last year was kind of their peak year and their optimal chance, I think. So I don't expect them to be as good. And I don't trust the Browns with Deshaun like you. The defense is going to be really good. The Steelers' defense is going to be really good too, but their offense just is not going to be reliable enough. I think Joe Burrow has a monster year. Bengals 1 seed.
AFC South, I'm going to go with the Houston Texans getting the 3 seed, going 12-5. They are plus 105 to win the division. We talked about it last night. I think there's a legit shot after this year. We're looking at CJ Stroud as the second best quarterback in the league. With that passing trio that he has now at his disposal, Joe Mixon, we'll see if he has any tread on the tires left. But that's a young and up-and-coming defense, a really good young head coach. And for them to do what they did last year in both D'Amico's rookie year as a head coach and CJ's rookie year as a quarterback, I think it's only up from there. I think the Colts are going to challenge them. I'm a really big fan of Shane Steichen, but I'm not a believer in the Jags. I think that's a team that misses the playoffs, goes under 500. And the Titans, I think, are one of the worst teams in the league this year with like a 3-14 to a 4-13 record. So give me the Houston Texans there to continue their ascent.
Yeah, we see this one the same as well. Texans, I have them going 12-5 just like you, but I have them end up getting the 2 seed, like you said, plus 105 to win the division. What CJ Stroud did last year was just incredible. It's a year ahead of schedule. If he had a year like that this coming year, I think a lot of people would expect that, but now they're just expecting everything from him. He's, I think, like second or third in MVP odds, which could very realistically happen. They have a ton of weapons on the offensive side of the ball. The defense is pretty solid as well. And they're in a pretty easy division, in my opinion. I'm not very high on the Colts. I just don't see it with Anthony Richardson. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting hurt again or just benched because he's just way too inconsistent. And then at the bottom of the division, I think the Jags are going to regress a decent amount. And then it's going to look like, is Trevor Lawrence? There's going to be a lot of question marks with him at the end of the year. And then the Titans, like you said, I think are going to be one of the worst teams in the league. So I think the Texans kind of take this division and run with it, and it might be their division for the next couple of years here.
All right, and to wrap it up, AFC West, I don't think there's much to say about this one. Both have the Chiefs, so we both have them 12-5 as well. I have them as – you have them getting the 3 seed with that projection? Yes. Yeah, and I have them getting the 2 seed. I think it's basically going to be what the Patriots were with Brady. As long as Mahomes is upright and healthy, I think you can pencil them in as a division winner. So, all right, we go on to the wild card now. My 5 seed actually comes in out of the AFC South with the Colts. I think I'm a lot higher on them than you. I think seeing what they did last year with Gardner Minshew, if Shane Steichen's able to get the most out of Anthony Richardson, which I think he's a much better coach than his college coach in Billy Napier, and he proved last year he can win games and go to the playoffs and nearly win in the playoffs with Gardner Minshew, I think that's certainly a scenario going forward that we could see this team continue to improve. And it was one of those things too. Anthony Richardson needs reps and needs to play, but he also really benefited, I think, from being able to sit back and kind of learn last year as well. You got a fully healthy Jonathan Taylor. You got some defensive difference makers on that team. So they're kind of like the Rams for me, where I'll be shocked if they actually are 12-5 come year end, maybe more of 11-6. 10-7, but that's just kind of how the schedule projection broke out for me at the end of the day. But plus 140 to make the playoffs, that's a bet that I really like for them to sneak in, and you win that whether they win the wild card spot or the division.
Yeah, my first wild card team, the 5 seeds, can be the Ravens, finishing 12-5, minus 260 to make the playoffs. I think they're still going to be a really good team. You still have Lamar, 2-time MVP now, and then you add Derrick Henry into the backfield here, which is pretty scary. I was listening to ESPN this morning. They were talking about how if you play the read option perfectly, you end up with a one-on-one with someone. So that's either Lamar one-on-one in space. He's going to make a dude miss a lot, or Derrick Henry just running someone over, which you might get him down the first couple of times, but towards the end of the game in the fourth quarter, that's not something that defensive backs are going to be wanting to do. So I think they will be able to wear teams down with the running game. Lamar's proven it at this point. He's a very good passer, and their defense is still pretty good. So I have them 5 seed finishing 12-5.
Yep, I have them finishing 12-5 as well. That gets them the 6 seed though in this scenario, -2 6 seed to make the playoffs. I think it could go back and forth between them and the Bengals. I'm not really picky about it going either way, but I'm really excited to see what Derrick Henry looks like in this Ravens offense and what he has left. I think just the way he's played his entire career, he's not a guy that's built off speed and shiftiness. Like he's a guy that will just run through your face, and I don't think he's necessarily lost that. And I think the Ravens will really try and even bring more of that out of him. It just feels like he was always built and made to play for the Baltimore Ravens. So that's one of the offseason acquisitions that I'm looking forward to seeing the most this year. But they're my 6 seed. I think you kind of summed up everything on them. All they need to do is get in, and they'll have a chance to make a run to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think my 6 seed is where we kind of defer a little bit. I had the Browns finishing 11-6 plus 145. I know there's so many questions with Deshaun. I don't know if they're going to get answered, but even if you have a backup come in at some point, I think this defense and the running game's good enough. Nick Chubb coming back. You still have Myles Garrett on the defense, and the back end's pretty good. I think they'll be good enough to win 11 games here and find themselves in the playoffs again.
Yeah, Browns are a team I'm definitely lower on. I don't even have them making it. It's because of Watson. I think he's really kind of holding them back. Like that roster, it might be one of the best 5 rosters in the league, and also without Chubb, I think that's going to hurt them as well. Um, but if he's not good, and you say what you want about Jameis, you got to rely on him. He could lose you quite a few games with his turnovers, but he could also go out there and have some heroics. Just too much of an unknown for me. So with my 7 seed, I was kind of surprised too to see this team finding their way in. I thought it would have at least been the Dolphins potentially, just because I think they're going to be good enough to compete for the division title potentially, but not good enough. I have the Steelers going in, and I have them getting in at 9-8, and it's just one of those things where I feel like even at their worst, you know what they're going to get from them. You know they're going to be at least a 500 team, and that quarterback situation is going to be something to watch all year, because I feel like there might even be scenarios where Russ starts the first 3 games, Fields goes in for a few, gets hurt potentially, Russ comes back in. Like, I don't think either of those quarterbacks is going to play that big of a majority of the season. Like, I feel like it could be kind of an alternating cast there for the Steelers, but I really don't think there's that big of a difference between the two right now either. So give me the Steelers at 9-8 plus 185 to get into the playoffs and be the 7 seed, but they're kind of back to where they've been over these past few years, where it's just like you're in no man's land. They're kind of like I think you said it about the Saints in the NFC. Remind me kind of that scenario where good players, solid roster, but at the end of the day, just not enough to make a difference.
Yeah, my final team in the AFC is going to be the Bills, going 10-7. They're minus 175 to make the playoffs. They still have Josh Allen. I know they're definitely going to regress. They lost a lot on defense. Diggs being gone is obviously big, but it might end up being a blessing in disguise for Josh Allen, not trying to force the ball to him, maybe rely a little more on the running game with James Cook and not trying to force the ball as much. And when you still have Josh Allen, I think you can win a decent amount of games. He can make some plays that only a few people in the world can make. So I have them squeaking in 10-7 as the 7 seed.
All right, AFC Championship. There has never been a three-peat winner in Super Bowl history, and I don't think it happens this year. I'm going to go with the upstart team, the team that I was saying I think this guy breaks through even more and anoints himself as, the guy right behind Patrick Mahomes, and that's CJ Stroud with the Texans knocking off the Bengals. I think that would be very bad break for Joe Burrow, where it's like, all right, I don't have to play Mahomes this year. I got the home game, home AFC title game. I got my chance. And then here comes CJ Stroud and this young upstart Texans team. Joe Mixon revenge game in the AFC title. Texans go on to the Super Bowl to play the Eagles.
Yep. So I have the same situation as you, Bengals hosting the Texans, but I'm going to take the Bengals. I talked about it earlier when discussing the Bengals winning the division and getting the number 1 seed. I think Joe Burrow going to have a monster year. Anytime he's been in the playoffs and been healthy, he's just played really, really well. And I think he does it here and takes his team to the Super Bowl where they'll face the Lions.
All right, we will finish with a rapid fire. We will go through our MVPs, our rookies of the year, and our offensive and defensive players of the year. So, all right, Kev, MVP for you will be, and give their odds as well.
Joe Burrow plus 950. He's going to be the best quarterback on the best team this year. That's usually how the MVP award goes. So Joe Burrow.
I took a swing on this one with Anthony Richardson. You said it best, where it's the best team. It's usually the team that has the best record. The quarterback on that team wins. I mean, I feel like that's what we've seen over the past decade or so. So mine's more of a long shot, kind of off the wall play, because I think at the end of the day, you could give it to Mahomes every single year if you wanted to. It's kind of just like LeBron in the NBA. But I took Anthony Richardson 35-1 to win the MVP. I think he has a freakish rushing season. I think we see an emergence as a passer. So certainly a boomer bust player, but I actually took it with a bonus bet. It was like a $10 bonus bet. So that's something I'm going to be rooting on this year. Offensive player of the year, I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb, 10-1. I don't even have the Cowboys making the playoffs, but I saw something on Twitter the other day, and it really it was very simple, but it made me think, like, if you look at this Cowboys team, if they're winning games, they're going to be winning with the pass. They're going to be winning with CeeDee Lamb. They don't have much of a run game. They don't really have much of a receiving game outside of CeeDee Lamb. You look, if they're losing games and they're struggling, they're going to be putting up monster numbers. Dak might even lead the league in passing. Lamb might lead the league in receiving, but the defense might be poor enough where it's like it doesn't matter, and you got to kind of go out there and throw it 40 to 45 times a game. So I think CD is well over 100 catches, probably over 1,500 yards, maybe even lead the league in receiving yards. You get him at 10-1, offensive player of the year. I think that's a great potential bet there after you just cashed in on that contract.
Yeah, my offensive player of the year, I'm going Bijan Robinson plus 1,800. I think I'm a little bit higher on the Falcons than some people. I think the offense is going to be really good. I think he might be the focal point of it, kind of like Christian McCaffrey in the Niners. He can do everything. He'll get the goal line touches. He can break one on any play, and then he can also catch the ball out of the backfield.
All right, defensive player of the year. I'm going to go with Max Crosby, 7-1. He is a guy that really went to bat for Antonio Pierce and seemed like he really wanted him. I think it's a guy that is going to play hard each and every week. And we've seen that before. His motor is one of the best in the league. Now he's playing for a coach that he really loves too, and a defensive-minded coach that I think could be able to get the most out of him. So give me Max Crosby as my defensive player of the year at 7-1.
My defensive player of the year, I'm going Michael Parsons plus 550. He's just a monster since the moment he came into the league. He could have won this award before. He hasn't yet. It is a contract year for him, so I expect him to go out there and just have a huge year.
All right, offensive rookie of the year. I'm going with Caleb Williams at plus 135. I think Marvin Harrison is going to be a monster. I think he has a great year. I think the Cardinals are a team that surprises some people, maybe win like 8 games. But I have the Bears going 10-7, making the playoffs, and they're not doing that without a monster year from Caleb. And no rookie quarterback, I think, has ever walked into as good of a situation. You have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DeAndre Swift, Cole Kmet, a really good defense. He's set up to succeed. Like, Bryce Young is kicking himself that he wasn't the number 1 pick this year instead. So give me Caleb Williams plus 135. Is that really worth a bet for a plus 135 for the whole season? I don't know, but a win's a win at the end of the day if you're good with having your money tied up that long. But I'll go with Caleb Williams there, plus 135.
Yeah, I agree with you for all the same reasons. Plus 135, how can it not be him? I mean, I don't know who else is really going to have as good of a year as him. And like you said, he's set up so perfectly to just have a great rookie year and potentially lead his team to the playoffs.
Defensive rookie of the year, another long shot pick here. I'm going to go with Eagles first round pick, Quinyon Mitchell at 16-1. Darius Slay is older. I don't think he'll be in a scenario where he'll play the whole season. James Bradbury, he was moving over to safety, but he's out now as well. They're going to be relying on youth in the secondary. And if I have the Eagles being the NFC representative, being the number 1 seed, I think he's going to have a big year. He's going to have to help turn the football over, have 4 to 5 interceptions, maybe a pick 6, and be one of the best corners in the NFC from a young age. So Quinyon Mitchell, 16-1. I think he has got a direct path to playing time as well. So I'm going to go with him as my defensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, we kind of thought about this the same way. I'm just going with a different rookie corner, Terrion Arnold for the Lions out of Alabama. If the Lions have a great year, he's probably going to have a big portion of that because the secondary needed a lot of improvement. He was regarded as one of the top cornerbacks in the draft, along with Quinyon, who's obviously on the Eagles that you just talked about, but I'm going Terrion Arnold.
All right, and then to wrap it up, the Super Bowl headed down to New Orleans this year, Kev. Who will be the winner out on Bourbon Street come February?
Joe Burrow. I've been talking about it all episodes so far. The Bengals I'm really high on. I have Joe Burrow getting the 1 seed. Bengals getting the 1 seed. Joe Burrow MVP. I think he caps it the year off with just beating the Lions, Super Bowl MVP, all of it. Bengals have a great year.
That's a full circle moment for him too, because that's where they won it in 2020 at LSU. The Louisiana guy and everything. That be a good story. And if the Eagles don't win it, I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for the Bengals. I know I have the Texans, but I think I'm rooting for the Bengals this year. It would be cool to see because I feel like he's been close quite a few times. Hasn't broken through. Has had some bad luck with some health, but that would be a cool story and definitely a nice change of pace from the Chiefs. But I've got the Eagles, baby. I've got them beating the Texans in the Super Bowl. Say I'm a homer, say whatever you want. This is biased. But I do think offensively, if that entire group is healthy and on the field, nobody matches what Jalen Hurts looked like in 2022. Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert when he's healthy, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. The line, even without Jason Kelsey, I still think is going to be a top 5 unit. Defense, sure, a little bit more question marks, but I think we've seen more and more over the years now. You need to be able to go out there and win those high-scoring games, those high-scoring battles. Just look at the first Super Bowl, the Eagles won 41-33 against the Patriots, and then look how they lost against the Chiefs. That was a high-scoring shootout game. The defense is just going to have to get a few clutch key stops at times and in some big spots, and I think they have the defensive coordinator to really help bring this group around. So boomer bust for the Eagles this year, Super Bowl champion or a team that misses a playoff. I really don't think it's in between, but Eagles at 14-1 is my Super Bowl pick this year. Lock it in, and that will do it for the 2024 season prediction show here. Any last second kind of bold predictions, bold comments, Kev, out of you?
No, nothing too bold. I do just hope that you are right and I'm wrong, and the Eagles do end up winning the Super Bowl this year.
I'm going to go. The Cowboys go 7-10. Mike McCarthy fired by the 10th game of the season. I'm going to go with that. I think something blows up in their face this year, but maybe that's a little wishful thinking as well. But as always, everyone, thank you for tuning in. We will be back next week to cover week 2 and hopefully talk about the Eagles' first win of the season.